with the ladies and excelled in sports, wasting away their days sitting under a tree for shade, sipping on cheap liquor and talking about the good old days. Except they weren't even out of their 20s yet, and their dreams were already dead. A guy drinking under a tree in Mounts Corner could just as easily be someone smoking a blunt on a park bench in the Bronx or drinking their lunch in a bar in Houston. A person I describe as under a tree represents anyone who has decided it'll never happen for them, so why even bother trying? Personally, I never in my life thought that my journey was going to end in Mounts Corner. I might have been raised in a small pond, but I was convinced that my hustle and determination were going to make me a fish that was going to swim on to wider waters. Even when I was really fucking up, I always believed that there was something greater out there for me. And how did I know that? How was I sure of it? Because all the incredible books I was reading and inspirational music I was listening to told me so. The beauty of books. If I've had any advantage in this life, it's that I was encouraged to read. From an early age, my mother always made sure she had a book in my face. One of the first ones I remember her giving me was from the Jehovah's Witnesses Watchtower publications called My Book of Bible Stories. I read those tales over and over again. Around the same time I started reading Watchtowers, my mother made another great move by enrolling me in the Book It program at my school, Whitefield Elementary. The program was sponsored by Pizza Hut, and the idea was every time you read 4 books, you would get a free personal pan pizza. Recently, I read a study that claimed this program didn't actually increase or decrease a person's motivation for reading. I would like to take this opportunity to tell whoever wrote that study to please shut the fuck up forever. I can promise you that the Book It program motivated the hell out of me when it came to reading. Maybe I was predisposed because I looked like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, but I used to love Pizza Hut. Nothing was more exciting than going to Pizza Hut on a Friday night, showing them my reading certificate, and being rewarded with a personal pan pizza. Another savvy thing my mother did was encourage me to read books about people I didn't seem to have anything in common with. Not that there were a ton of books about little black boys growing up in the rural South anyway that weren't about slaves. She wanted books to help introduce me to worlds that might otherwise seem foreign. As a result, I read a lot of Judy Blume and Beverly Cleary. I read so many of them that after a while I started believing that I knew everything about women, especially little girls. To this day, I still think about how if Ramona Quimby had grown up in this era, they would have loaded her up on Ritalin and killed all her creativity and imagination. My mother might have had me reading books about little white girls, but my father was giving me a super black reading list. From an early age, he'd been exposing me to books like The Autobiography of Malcolm X or Message to the Black Man in America by Elijah Muhammad. At first, I wasn't interested, but as I got a little older, a force came into my life that made me want to pick up all those books my father had been recommending. That made me believe that instead of being a fish stuck in a small pond, I was actually a god in control of my own universe. That force was hip-hop. The microphone fiend. As a kid, R&B was the dominant music heard in our home. My mother loved the Supremes. She still plays them for my daughter today. While my father was into soul and funk, especially James Brown. The godfather of soul was born in Barnwell, South Carolina, and I think my father always felt a connection with him because of that. My dad used to have this black Datsun pickup truck, and he would drive around Mounts Corner playing song after song of James Brown. From the old stuff like Cold Sweat and Say It Loud to the funky shit like Doing It to Death, and I'm a greedy man. My father loved every groove James ever recorded. He even managed to crash James' funeral in Augusta, Georgia, talking his way onto the stage by acting like he was a part of the family. In a way, he was. The same way my father couldn't get enough James Brown, I developed a similar love affair with hip-hop. Like all true hip-hop junkies, I can still clearly remember the time I got my first hit. I was with my cousin Tyrone McKelvey at my Uncle Harris and Aunt Lottie's house when Tyrone announced, "I got a new song I'm gonna let you hear," as if he was about to let me in on a big secret. He stuck in the tape, and soon I was transfixed by a bass line that felt like it was reaching out of the speakers and punching me in the chest. Then came a deep voice that was at once both harder and slicker than anything I'd ever heard before. Thinking of a master plan, 'cause ain't nothing but sweat inside my hand. When I heard Rakim spit those opening lines, it was like a whole new world that opened up before me. The song sampled the soul sound of my father's generation. Don't look any further from the Temptations' Dennis Edwards. But Rakim's voice sounded like it was speaking directly to me. He was describing a struggle I was already seeing around me. Not enough money to buy groceries or pay the rent, but in a way that sounded empowering. Rakim might have only had sweat inside his hand, but his voice was so self-assured and intelligent that you just knew it was only a matter of time before he got his hands on some money again. In fact, the song was called Paid in Full. he wasn't just going to get paid. He was going to get paid in full. In those 3 minutes, my life was transformed forever. From that moment on, I was all in on this hip-hop thing, soaking up every single. Remember those? Cassette and CD I could get my hands on. In the early 90s, that meant listening to a lot of New York legends like Biggie, Nas, Wu-Tang, and my personal favorites, Mobb Deep. Studying their lyrics, I began to notice references to places that I'd never heard of before. What is this Queensbridge Nas speaks of, I'd ask myself. I don't know it, but if it birthed Nas, it must be popping. Wu-Tang kept referencing a Shaolin. Is that where all the gods go to build, I wondered? And Biggie kept talking about BK. I didn't know if it was Burger King or some other place, but if he was referencing it, I wanted to check it out. I had the same reaction to Outkast and Goody Mob rapping about Atlanta or Tupac shouting out LA. I'd never set foot in California, but to live and die in LA described the city with so much energy that Pac made me feel I'd been there. When I did make it to LA for the first time years later, thanks to Tupac, I hit the ground with the confidence of someone who'd grown up in South Central. My crew and I loved those songs so much that eventually we started naming spots around Mounts Corner after the places we'd hear shouted out. Highway 6, the notorious drug corridor, became Shaolin after Wu-Tang's nickname for Staten Island. The neighborhood of Whitesville became Brownsville after MOP's Brooklyn stomping grounds. A house where we sold dope became Queensbridge after the home of Nas and Mobb Deep. A lot of folks in the media at the time were calling hip-hop a cancer, a negative influence on African-American youth. They said it promoted violence and was misogynistic. They may have been right, but it was having a different influence on me. The truth was that hip-hop wasn't just helping me come up with corny nicknames for places around Mounts Corner. It was sparking my interest in history. It was whetting my appetite for knowledge, definitely more than it was being sparked in school. As I pored over the lyrics of groups like Public Enemy or Wu-Tang Clan, the messages of black consciousness my father had been pushing on me started to feel more relevant. When I heard Chuck D say, Farrakhan's a prophet and I think you ought to listen to him, or Biggie say that he was deep like the mind of Farrakhan, the dots begin to connect. Thanks to hip-hop, I started devouring books off my father's reading list. Books like Message to the Black Man in America, which exposed systemic racism, and Kills from Niggas to God, which expanded on the 5% teachings I'd heard referenced in many songs. The Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukov and the 48 Laws of Power. Robert Greene's classic that was quoted by so many rappers also helped me become more strategic in my thinking. People don't realize how a man's whole life can be changed by one book, Malcolm X. The combined effect of these books and music on my mentality was extremely powerful. Imagine me as a teenager. I'm lying on my bed in our trailer late at night. Occasionally, I'll hear a car kicking up pebbles as it drives down our dirt road. The only other sounds are crickets and bullfrogs outside my window. I'm truly stuck out in the middle of nowhere, a million miles away from where the action is. But in my busted CD Walkman, a piece of tape holding down the battery hatch, a whole other world is forming. Wu-Tang Clan's Cream starts to play softly through the headphones, just loud enough that I can hear it without waking up my mom in the next room. Leave it up to me while I be living proof, to kick the truth to the young black youth. But Shorty's running wild, smoking cess, drinking beer, and ain't trying to hear what I'm kicking in his ear. As Inspector Deck spits those rhymes over a relentless, driving RZA production, my mind is far away from the cornfields, dirt roads, and swamps outside my window. Nope, I'm weaving through the streets of New York City in a kitted out Jeep, flying past bodegas and housing projects. Instead of a small-town country boy, I feel like a rap superhero, capable of leaping over my small pond in a single bound and landing wherever I damn well please. That's the confidence I always got from hip-hop. When Rakim said he was born to be the sole controller of the universe, besides the part of the map I hit first, that power came through the speakers and went directly into my soul. Yes, the map might say I was stuck in Mounts Corner for now, but my home was about to be the cosmos. With hip-hop and books empowering me, the excuse I'm from this small-ass town simply wasn't going to be a good enough reason for me not to make it. I'd learned that from Malcolm X to Method Man, from Louis Farrakhan to the Notorious B.I.G., so many of my heroes had grown up in circumstances as bad, if not worse, than mine. If you let society tell it, none of them should have achieved what they did. But they had made it. They had become legends because someone had planted the seed in their minds that they were bigger than whatever environment could have easily held them down. Just like they had instilled that sense of confidence in me. Which is why I have to say thank you to Rakim for planting the seed in my mind that it ain't where you from physically, but where you're at mentally that allows someone to transcend their circumstances. And then thank you to the Wu-Tangs, the Mobb Deeps, and the Nas's of the world for watering that seed until it blossomed into a confident young man who was determined to transcend whatever barriers life seemed to have put in front of him. beyond your zone. In order to chase your dreams to their end, you must be very focused on getting inspiration where it's available. Take books. Just by the fact that you're reading these pages, you obviously respect the value of the written word. Make sure, however, that you continue to explore books that don't seem to directly connect with your experience. If you're a young black woman, read up on some of the experiences of Asian men. If you're a white guy, pick up a book about the struggle of black women or the immigrant experience. If you're into sports, read a book about science. Or if you mainly read self-help books, check out a historical novel. As I learned from my mother, there's incredible power in subjects that don't seem to pertain to you. One of the best books I read recently is Gary Vaynerchuk's Jab, 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 Right Hook, a guide to how to get your story across on social media. On the surface, I wouldn't seem to have that much in common with Gary. He was born in Russia, and as a kid moved to New Jersey, where his parents opened a liquor store. He did poorly in school. Okay, maybe we do have something in common. And spent most of his time helping out around their shop of selling baseball cards. After college, he took over the family business and through a combination of social media savvy, aggressive pricing, and all-around hustle, transformed it from a $3 million to $50 million business in just over 5 years. Gary doesn't look like me. He didn't grow up in a trailer. He wasn't raised in the same religion as me. Hell, he didn't even start off speaking the same language as me. But his story still spoke directly to me. It motivated the shit out of me to keep hustling every day. And when I interviewed him on The Breakfast Club in my podcast, The Brilliant Idiots, a lot of people said they were some of our most motivational episodes ever. Exploring people and ideas outside your comfort zone is one area where hip-hop has been, unfortunately, very weak. As a culture, we don't allow ourselves a chance to grow. If something doesn't look like us or sound like us, we have a tendency to dismiss it out of hand. I grew up as black as you can get. You ain't getting any blacker than Larry McKelvey's son. But I still refuse to have a limited cultural experience. If something seems authentic and interesting, I'm going to check it out. Whether on the surface it appears to be hip-hop or not. I'm never going to dismiss anything until I explore whether it might have some value for me. One year I was at the iHeartRadio Music Awards and they had a tribute to Freddie Mercury and Queen, who I admittedly didn't know that much about. When I saw them on stage playing Another One Bites the Dust, I said, oh shit, these guys were white? Another One Bites the Dust used to have the zebra rocking, so I assumed they were black. My dad, Mr. Black Power, probably knew they were white, but that didn't stop him from playing them in his club. If a song rocks, it rocks. Just as if a book is interesting, it's interesting. Never stunt your own growth by dismissing something just because it doesn't feel familiar. The holy ground of Walmart. Another mistake people with small pond mindsets make is not being motivated by the success stories taking place right in front of them. I've always had the opposite mentality. Growing up, I looked for every possible connection between myself and someone successful, no matter how tenuous the link might seem. I'll never forget flipping through the TV one afternoon after school and landing on BET's Rap City. The host, Big Tigger, was introducing DJ B-Lord as a guest on the show. Live from North Carolina is B-Lord, Tigger said before B quickly corrected him with, no, I'm from South Carolina. It was a seemingly insignificant moment, a couple of seconds on a video show, but it hit me like a lightning bolt. Wow, I remember thinking. That DJ on a national TV show just said he was from South Carolina. Someone from my state was a guest on the same show that Method Man, Raekwon, and Mobb Deep had all been on, the artists I'd been worshiping. With the simple words, no, I'm from South Carolina, suddenly a direct path from Monk's Corner to the rest of the world opened up before me. If B-Lord can make it, I can do something too, I told myself, and I never lost that faith. I got the same surge of confidence the first time I heard Wu-Tang's Inspector Deck rap, I smoke on the mic like smoking Joe Frazier. Why? Because I knew Joe Frazier was from Beaufort, South Carolina. Philly might try to claim him, but Smoking Joe was ours. My father kept a picture of him fighting Muhammad Ali in our trailer and always reminded me he was a Carolina boy. So hearing him shout it out in one of my favorite songs was like putting another battery in my back. Great people are born here, I figured. If he made it, I can make it too. If one person that looks like you made it, then you can too. Gary Vaynerchuk on The Brilliant Idiots. I was also inspired by Ryan and Doug Stewart, who were multi-sport stars in Monk's Corner. Ryan won a football scholarship to Georgia Tech and ended up getting drafted by the Detroit Lions, playing in the NFL for 5 years. From there, he and Doug started a sports radio show in Atlanta called The Two Live Stews, one of the all-time great show names. And then they started popping up on ESPN. Whenever I see them on ESPN's First Take, one of my favorite shows, I think, man, I watch those guys come up. If people respect their opinions on TV, then there's no reason they can't respect mine. Seeing local athletes get college scholarships always motivated me. From 1995 to 2000, it felt like there was a steady stream of guys from Moncks Corner who were getting a free education thanks to their football skills. Rusty Williams got a scholarship to Auburn. My cousin Tori Leifridge to Duke. My other cousin Mal Lawyer to Clemson. Yet another cousin Kente Palmer to Penn State. Courtney Brown, who was from Alvin, the next town over from Moncks Corner, also went to Penn State and then became the #1 pick in the NFL draft. Sports were never my thing, so there was no chance I was going to get that sort of ticket out of town. Still, watching so many of my peers head out to college made me think I've got to do better too. It wasn't limited to sports either. When my girlfriend, now my wife, Mook Mook, graduated high school in 2000, she ended up going to the University of South Carolina in Columbia. Knowing that my mother had graduated college back in her day motivated me too. Being aware of all that success made me think I can't be a bum. I got to do something too. I would even find inspiration in places as unlikely as Walmart. Growing up, if it was late at night and me and my homeboys were tired of sitting around playing video games, we'd go down to Walmart to look at shit. I thank God for 24-hour Walmarts because in a small town, even just wandering the aisles let me feel like I was ending my night on a high. As pathetic as that might sound to some of you who grew up in real cities, it was a big deal to me. I can say Walmart became my place of worship to a larger world. That sense of being a portal to opportunity became even more significant after I learned about the owners of the chain, the Walton family. The guy who started the company, Sam Walton, was from a small town just like me. In fact, the town he was born in, Kingfisher, Oklahoma, had a population of only around 2,500 people, making it an even smaller pond than Moncks Corner. That's no easy feat. When I read Sam Walton's story, I just figured if this guy from the middle of nowhere could make his dreams come true, why couldn't I? I didn't care that Sam Walton was a white man or that he was passionate about retail, which has never been an area of interest to me. I just knew he had come from a small town and built something national, something with a legacy. That was more than enough for me. Embrace your core. While it's important to rise above your roots and transcend your circumstances, it is also key that no matter where life takes you, you must never get detached from those roots. You can go from swimming in the smallest pond to controlling the oceans like Poseidon. But if you lose touch with your core, you're going to find yourself adrift. Make no mistake about it, Moncks Corner is my core. And as any real trainer will tell you, when your core isn't strong, everything else is going to fall apart. For instance, I'm having a great run in this media game. But there are absolutely still times when I become unsure of myself. Times when I feel confused about what moves I should be making. When I feel like I'm missing opportunities that I can't see. When I feel like my energy is blocked and I'm stuck in a rut. Every one of us feels this from time to time. How you handle those feelings is what will set you apart. When I'm stuck, my solution isn't to leave my house in New Jersey and go party in Manhattan. I don't try to make myself feel better by hanging out with fake industry people who are going to tell me how great I am all night, or a bunch of IG models who only want to be around me because I'm a little famous. No, when I'm stuck, I reconnect with my core. That means getting on a plane to Charleston and then heading straight to Moncks Corner. I will literally drive to my mom's house and go to sleep in my old bedroom. The room is basically how I left it. There's still a closet full of fading old The Source, XXL, and Blaze magazines. The pages I used to study like Muslims study the Quran or Jews the Torah, I'll pick them up and read fading articles about Ghostface Killah, my favorite MC, or Mobb Deep's Prodigy, just to remind myself of the energy I used to get from those pages. When I can reconnect with the dreams my younger self used to have, whatever little drama or doubt that was getting me down quickly becomes irrelevant. But I'm not done. After recharging at my mother's house, I'll drive to my late grandmother Rosalie Ford's house, God bless the dead. Nobody lives there anymore, but I'll sit on her porch and soak up all that house's great energy. I'll meditate and pray, and soon I'll feel like I'm talking to my grandmother again. It feels very natural, since as I mentioned, my grandmother always used to say she communicated with my dead grandfather. Having a similar chat with her gives me a peaceful feeling. After we talk, I'll open up the front door and go sit inside our empty house. I don't do it every trip because there's a big bolt on the door, and it can be a hassle to get the key. If you've ever entered an empty house, you know you're greeted by tremendous energy the moment you step across the threshold. It freaks some people out, but I embrace it. I love to revisit all my beautiful memories and reconnect with that kid who was so full of dreams. It never fails to get me back on point. When the roots are deep, there's no reason to fear to win. African proverb. It doesn't matter whether you're in media, law, sales, or education. Between Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, or whatever else comes next, all of our minds are cluttered these days. All of us feel overwhelmed by the pace of life, knocked off balance by the never-ending stream of information we read, watch, and listen to every day. In order to get your equilibrium right, you must return to your core, if you can still physically go back. Jump in the car or on a plane and get there ASAP. Lie in your old bed and reconnect with your old dreams. Sit on your front porch and remember how you felt as a young man or woman. If your relatives aren't around anymore, close your eyes and talk to your grandma or your grandfather or the auntie who raised you. Celebrate that the street you might live on now is nicer, but also embrace that dirt road you grew up on. Appreciate that all your power emanates from that dirt and that you wouldn't have it any other way. You'll probably shed a few tears, but they'll be empowering, not painful. Whether you grew up in a trailer in a dusty southern town, a housing project in Queens, or even a mansion in LA, understand that the dreams you had lying in your old bed or sitting on your old stoop are what got you where you are today, and that losing touch with them is the only thing that can stop you from transcending your circumstances. Principle 2, PYP. Pick your passion, poison, or procrastination. There are 3 primary P's to choose from in life. 1, passion, which leads to prosperity. 2, poison, which leads to pain. 3, procrastination, which doesn't lead anywhere at all, because you sit around waiting for things to just magically happen. Please don't pick P's numbers 2 and 3. Instead of hoping you'll be successful, follow your passion and make conscious decisions that will help you realize your destiny. Destiny is not a matter of chance, it's a matter of choice. That's a quote from the 19th century American orator, William Jennings Bryan. Or so I'm told. I guess I heard it at some point in high school. Though I can't say when for sure, given how high I was during most of my classes, no matter how that quote got into my head, I'm grateful I held on to it, because it changed the course of my life. Remember those choose-your-own-adventure books from back in the day that allowed you to pick between different outcomes? I loved them because if you chose a storyline that led to you getting eaten by a shark or cut in half from a trans-dimensional portal, you could just go back a few pages and start over again. In life, second and third chances often aren't an option. If you pick the wrong adventure too many times, there's no coming back. A book about my teenage years could have easily been called Choose Your Own Fuck Up. Most of the choices I made during that time had me headed straight toward one of the 3 dead ends my father kept warning me about. I was caught up in building street cred during my teenage years, and I'm not proud of all the dumb shit I did. All these years later, I can report that there is not one major purchase I've ever been able to make using street cred. No dealership has ever accepted street cred for a car, and no resort has ever let me book a room with an ocean view using street cred. When I go see my banker, she's never asked me if I was interested in getting better interest on my gangster. This is why I get so frustrated when I see young men giving themselves titles like trap niggas, D-boys, real street niggas, savages, and goons. It's as if we call ourselves everything but men. Real men protect and provide for their families by any legal means necessary. Did you catch that? By any legal means necessary. I shake my head at these kids, but back in the day, I was making the same mistakes. I was dumb as any D-boy, as stupid as any savage, as greedy as any goon. Yet here I am today. That's why when you read yet another story about kids wilding out in Chicago or acting like a bunch of damn fools somewhere, okay, everywhere in Florida, just remember that I was once that stupid too, maybe even worse. That's why if you take one thing away from these stories, don't let it be, man, Charlemagne was bad when he was a kid. Instead, let it be, as bad as he was, Charlemagne still managed to turn it around. Then remember that all these other young thugs out here, no matter how lost they might seem, can make similar changes in their lives, as long as they accept responsibility for their decisions, just like I did. Nerd life. I might have ended my school days as a thug, but I started off as a sensitive-ass square. That's right, I would not stop crying the day my mother dropped me off for first grade at Memager Elementary in downtown Charleston. I walked around bawling because I was surrounded by kids I didn't know, but things got better the second day. And by the end of my first week, I was back in my comfort zone. After a week or so, I'd established myself as one of the stars of the class. The school even selected me and another little girl to take a foreign language class, an honor that was rarely bestowed back then. It made me feel special. The kids in the class gravitated toward me because I was smart and extremely verbal. After school, I would hold court by the playground and keep the other kids in stitches by running my mouth about kindergarten life. Which girls my friends had crushes on, comic books I'd read, and little impressions of our teachers. Even back then, I got a rush from being the center of attention and keeping people entertained. By second grade, we had moved to Mounts Corner, where I continued taking French and Spanish. Soon they had me in the accelerated class, and I'd gained a reputation as one of the bright kids in our school. My only weakness was that even though I was very verbal, I had a strange fear of talking in front of the class. Then I learned the trick. If I scrawled out a couple words about what I wanted to say ahead of time, I became more comfortable. Once I started doing that, you couldn't keep me out of the spotlight. I even starred in our school's production, Stone Soup. I can honestly say in elementary school, I was everything I want my own kids to be today. A funny, hardworking, respected nerd who loved learning, appreciated by the teachers and popular with the other kids. Then I got to Berkeley Middle School for 6th grade and things began to change, and not for the better. In elementary school, the classes hadn't been grouped according to ability, but for middle school, they broke us up in tracks. A and C were the accelerated classes, while B and F were for the regular kids and D seemed to stand for delinquent. I was in A, which definitely didn't stand for African American, as there were only a handful of black kids in both accelerated classes. I can even name all of them some 25 years later. JoJo Smith, Teresa Grant, Jasmine Monroe, Denise Gibbs, Tamika Haynes, and Danielle Dixon. All the other black kids were in B or D. As a result, I started hanging with the nerdy white kids who were in my advanced classes. My best friends were two white guys, Connor and Wyatt. Did I even have to mention they were white with names like that? I spent almost all my time between classes or at recess with those two and their friends. There's an action shot of us goofing around in our 6th grade yearbook that pretty much captures that period. I've got big Coke bottle glasses and a fanny pack on, which was my standard get-up in those days. When I was older and caught up in the thug lifestyle, I used to hate seeing that picture because it told an undeniable truth about me. I was a fucking nerd. Even though my nerd credentials were impeccable, I couldn't help but notice that my friendship with the white kids seemed to have its limits. We were thick like thieves at school, but when the afternoon bell rang, we'd go our separate ways. They'd have play dates, sleepovers, and birthday parties with their other white friends, but I never seemed to be invited. To this day, I don't know if they didn't want me over at their houses or if the resistance was coming from their parents. I lived in a trailer with my Jehovah's Witness mother and my jerry-curled father. Their parents were middle-class white people whose fathers probably wore polo shirts and Dockers. My world might have seemed too foreign to them to connect with. Whatever the reason, I can remember thinking, I don't really belong with these kids. They're not my people. That left me with a gnawing desire to be part of something. If the white nerds weren't ready to fully embrace me, I was going to chase that feeling of fitting in, wherever it took me. The thug life. My transition from nerd to thug started with an innocent comment about Belle Biv DeVoe. I was at my aunt's house in New Jersey, hanging out with my sister Teresa and my cousin Rachel. We were watching TV when the video for BBD's hit Poison came on. "Ronnie's so cute," declared Rachel as he strutted on screen, rocking an African medallion, a full-length black leather coat, and a high-top fade. "No, Mike was the cute one," countered Teresa. "I just wanted to be down, so I took my sister's side." "Yeah, Michael's definitely the cute one," I said with enthusiasm. The moment I said cute, they both whipped around and looked at me like I just announced that black lives don't matter. "Daddy, come here," screamed my sister, causing my father to rush into the room. "Nard just said one of the boys in Belle Biv DeVoe is cute." Nard is another one of my nicknames, short for Leonard. Now, this was way before the days of gender fluidity, trans rights, or acceptance of any sort of behavior that could be interpreted as gay. Even if those concepts had been popular back then, my father still wouldn't have cared. There was no way his eldest son was going to go around calling male R&B singers cute. "Get the hell away from these girls," he barked, and then dragged me to my aunt's backyard. My older cousins Ty and John were already out there playing football, where in my father's eyes, I should have been all along. He told them what I'd said and then left it up to them to deal with their pussy-ass cousin. For the next 3 hours, they treated me like the football. They kicked me, punched me, and dragged me all over their yard. My father wasn't done with me, though. When we got back to Monk's Corner, he made it his business to make sure that I was spending the rest of the summer with real niggas like my cousins. It was time to beat the influence of the nerdy white boys out of me before I became too soft. There was, however, a glitch in my father's plan. I didn't like my cousins, mainly because they used to beat the shit out of me. It wasn't just the episode in Jersey either. Every time I'd see them, they'd tackle me, body slam me, put me in a sleeper hold, or slap me in the back of my neck. Who wants to constantly deal with that? My cousins didn't like me either. They'd seen me doing well in school, strutting around with my fanny pack, reading books, and hanging out with the white boys. Mind you, there were other black kids in our school with glasses and fanny packs. They were popping back then. But those other kids weren't Larry McKelvey's son. Uncle Larry's son being a teacher's pet and a good student was an affront to them, so if they saw me with Connor and Wyatt, they'd tease me, calling me Mr. Magoo, a white boy, and of course, Urkel. anything that might demoralize or embarrass me. My father never outright told me he was behind the bullying, but I believe he was. The way I see it, even though my cousins legitimately didn't like me, they still had too much respect for my father as a street dude to lay a finger on me, let alone brazenly bully me in public. My father had to have given them the green light. My father probably figured it was a positive kind of intimidation, the type of bullying that happens when your family is full of future convicts and they want you to stop wasting your life trying to be a good kid who gets straight A's and B's so you can come hang with them and work on being a future convict too. If that was their plan, it sure as hell worked. Connor, Wyatt, and the other white kids weren't interested in hanging out with me if it meant having to deal with a bunch of older black kids who seemed hell-bent on slapping and punching their friend Larry. My cousins must have seemed like ISIS to them. The white boys already didn't want to hang outside of school, and soon they were steering clear of me in the cafeteria and playground too because they were scared. I can't blame them. I was scared too. For a kid who had become accustomed to being the center of attention, finding myself without a group of friends was depressing. When it became clear my white friends weren't going to hang out with me anymore, I faced a choice. I could hang with my cousins, or I could have no friends at all. So I started rolling with my cousins, even though they continued to bully me. One of their favorite games was knocking off my glasses. It was as if my glasses represented everything: good grades, white friends, and a bright future that they hated. I once read that during the Cultural Revolution in China, wearing glasses often got people killed because they were a symbol of elitism. My cousins didn't know nothing about China, but they instinctively had a similar reaction to me wearing glasses. That meant every time I saw my cousins, there would be a smack, a push, or a trip, and bam, my glasses would be on the ground. After a while, the frames got bent completely out of shape and one of the lenses kept popping out. I had to walk around with tape on them just to keep everything in place. One morning, I was out in front of the school when my cousins Brandon and Cameron rolled up. "Yo, what's up, Larry?" called out Cameron. Before I could answer, he gave me a hard shove and my glasses flew off. When they hit the ground, one of the lenses shattered into 1,000 pieces. Staring at the broken glasses on the sidewalk while my cousins laughed at me, I realized I was tired. Tired of being bullied. Tired of not having friends. Tired of always looking over my shoulder. Fuck this smart shit, I told myself. I gotta be down with them guys if I'm gonna survive. This time, I wasn't getting my glasses fixed. My days as Mr. Magoo were over. I was casting my lot with my thug-ass cousins, which is when the real bullshit began. School days. My first concession to the thug life was hiding my intelligence. I suspect a lot of kids do this when they find themselves in an environment that doesn't value academic achievement and learning. They'd rather blend in by acting stupid than stand out by seeming smart. So in my case, the teacher's pet, who'd always raised his hand in class and volunteered to do extra work, suddenly became the class clown. I'd crack jokes, pass notes, make funny noises, and throw stuff when the teacher wasn't or was looking. Despite having been such an advanced student in elementary school, no one stepped in and encouraged me to do better. I was fairly new to Berkeley Middle, so the teachers there weren't familiar with the nerdy Larry who'd been studying French in elementary school. I was doing such a convincing impression of a knucklehead that they had no reason to believe that I was capable of more. It's tempting to look back and ask, why didn't my mother try to protect me? She should have kept me away from those dudes. First off, she simply didn't know. It's not like I went running to her with my drama. I also believe this was a tough time for my family. My father was going through his battles with drugs and alcohol, plus he was starting to step out on my mother a lot. For her part, my mother was doing the best she could. There wasn't much time to focus on why Larry was acting up in school. I managed to pass 6th grade, and when 7th grade rolled around, I was completely focused on being as big a pain in the ass as possible. Just as I'd gotten addicted to being the positive center of attention in elementary school, in middle school, I discovered the attention goes to the funny, disruptive kids. Armed with that information, I had only one objective every time I stepped into school: create some good laughs. The term good laugh became something of a messed up mantra for me and my cousin Kwame, who also went to Berkeley. We'd walk around doing dumb shit, and if we could get someone to crack up, we'd yell, "Good laugh, good laugh, good laugh," to each other in an idiotic voice. Imagine a black, less mature version of Beavis and Butthead. Nothing was off limits in our quest for a good laugh. I mean, nothing. For example, we noticed that our 7th grade teacher, I'll call him Mr. Walrus because that's what he was shaped like, had a particularly large set of testicles. Whenever he'd sit down, his balls would bunch up in his pants and form an inviting target. So one day, Kwame climbed down under his desk, snuck up on Mr. Walrus, and stabbed him in the balls with a pencil. Not with the eraser side either. When the pencil pierced his pouch, Mr. Walrus gave a wild scream and kicked his desk over. Kwame and I had bolted from the room before Mr. Walrus could catch us yelling, good laugh, as we ran down the hallway. Another time, Kwame stuck his finger in his underwear, got a little duty on his finger, and then walked up to a substitute teacher. I think you've got something on your face, he told her. Where? She asked innocently. Kwame then ran his tainted finger under her nose. Right there, he cackled, and then ran out of the classroom. Definitely a good laugh. Frankly, I'm embarrassed to even tell those stories, but I want you to really understand how obnoxious and disrespectful we were. We were exactly the type of kids I don't want my own children to turn into, or even be around. Needless to say, I failed 7th grade and had to go to summer school. To their credit, a few of the teachers saw that I wasn't as stupid as my actions suggested and encouraged me to get my act together. Larry, you're only choosing to play dumb, my 7th grade math teacher, Ms. Gibbs, told me. It might be funny to you now, but it's going to hurt you in the long run. I knew she was right, especially the choosing part, but I still didn't listen. I had convinced myself that being a class clown was the only way I was going to not just survive, but thrive at Berkeley Middle School. Instead of holding back, I actually doubled down on my bad behavior. Fun fact, Berkeley Middle School is where TV host Stephen Colbert's brother, Jason Colbert, used to teach 7th grade social studies. I remember thinking Mr. Colbert was cool because one day he and some other teachers came to school with their clothes on backward and performed Jump by Crisscross. We pronounced his name Colbert, not the French pronunciation Colbert that Stephen uses today. I guess Stephen decided to jazz it up for TV, and I don't blame him. By the way, what's up with guys from South Carolina taking French names as their handles? Charlemagne is French for Charles the Great, by the way. Going to summer school between 7th and 8th grades didn't put a dent in my delinquency. If anything, my behavior got worse in 8th grade because that's when alcohol got introduced into the mix. It started when my friend Jamal, R.I.P., began smuggling 40s into school. 8th fucking grade, can you believe it? And he wasn't alone. Caleb, who is now a stone alcoholic, would break out many liquor bottles on the bus that we'd drink before we got to school. One time I was in Miss Baylor's social studies class and showed my cousin Kwame a bottle of vodka Caleb had given me. I'm going to drink this right here, announced Kwame. Nah, just wait till recess, I told him. Fuck that, said Kwame, and took a big swig, making zero attempt to be subtle. Of course, Miss Baylor saw everything. We got pulled out of class and sent to the principal's office, where the bottle was discovered. For punishment, Kwame and I were put in this program called Skip, which was basically a teenager version of AA. I'd sit in a circle and have to tell the group, hi, my name is Larry, and I have a problem with alcohol. I wasn't alone. Jamal would often bring a 40 to recess, and we would stand around the schoolyard sneaking sips of Old English while other kids were playing football or basketball and be completely messed up before it was time to go back to class. What the hell was wrong with us? Just in case you have any doubt that the bad choices you make as a kid can mess you up forever, let me tell you what happened to Jamal. When we were teenagers, he got busted with a concealed weapon. Then he caught a couple cocaine convictions. Finally, in 2007, he was arrested for strangling a woman to death with her pajama pants. They gave him a 30-year bid, which he was serving until he killed himself in jail in 2014. I can't say for sure things would have turned out different for Jamal if we hadn't been getting wasted during 8th grade recess, but I can say that lifestyle was setting me up to ruin my own life. The administration could see that I was troubled. After a handful of incidents, they declared that I needed to either see an in-school therapist or be transferred. I agreed to talk to the therapist. But I only viewed the sessions as something I had to put up with until the administration stopped bothering me. Do you hear voices, Larry? The therapist asked me one day. In school, people would always mispronounce my name as Leonard, so after a while I was like, just call me Larry. My parents could never understand why at school I was known as Larry. Yes, I replied, I definitely do. What do they sound like? They sound a lot like you, and they keep asking me, do I hear voices? Thanks to that kind of attitude, I ended up failing 8th grade too. Time for another trip to summer school, which was the only way to prevent being left back a grade. This time, however, my father wasn't trying to fork over the summer school tuition. If Lenard wants to keep on being an idiot, let him get left back, he told my mother and me. He can spend next year getting teased for being stupid. Maybe being embarrassed will wake him up. My mother wasn't taking his heart in line. She thought it was important for me to graduate with my class. Taking advantage of the split in their ranks, I put on an earnest face and promised, sorry, I'll take it seriously this time. My father finally relented and put me in summer school. I managed to pass, and in the fall, I was ready to enter Berkeley High School. Good old Berkeley High School. I can say that the seed for every poor disciplinary choice I made in my adult life was planted at Berkeley. Its halls were filled with future thugs, drug dealers, and even murderers. You might wonder how a small town school could produce so many delinquents. Well, when I entered Berkeley High, being hard was the thing to be. Maybe in the 60s, civil rights would have been the popular movement or Black Power in the 70s, but in the 90s, it was the thug life. I give hip-hop credit for inspiring me to read more and be more socially conscious, but it also needs to be said that hip-hop's influence wasn't all positive. We were a bunch of country kids shaped by violent movies like Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood, and Juice, as well as aggressive music like Mobb Deep, UGK, The Ghetto Boys, and Onyx. When we heard Onyx yell, "Throw your guns in the air," we took it literally. We didn't have guns right then, but the seed was planted in our heads. It wouldn't take long for it to grow either. Hip-hop movies had a major impact on us too. When Juice came out, everyone talked about how fly Tupac looked when he tucked the .38 pistol into his 40 below Timberland boots. So of course me and my boys also wanted .38s and Tims to manifest all of Pac's swag. Same thing when Menace to Society was big. The movie might have been about the quest to get out of the ghetto, but we ignored that storyline. We were too gassed off how cool Lorenz Tate's old dog character looked, packing a 9mm pistol. Soon we were all trying to cop one of those as well. Hip-hop definitely got me hyped for my first fight in high school. My cousin Brian Washington and I were standing in line in the cafeteria when this upperclassman cut our spot. Despite only being a freshman, I told the guy, "Yo, you can't do that." He was a street dude and rolled with a crew of thugs, so of course he immediately turned around and started talking shit to us. What he didn't know was that morning I had been listening to Redman's Time for Some Action on my Sony Walkman. That song was so hyped that Mike Tyson even used to enter the ring to it. As this upperclassman was talking shit to us, all I could hear in my head was, "Time for some action. Time for some action." Without a word, I just cocked back and punched the dude dead in his nose. He stumbled and tried to grab me as he fell but couldn't hold on. I'd put him on his ass. He tried to get up and fight back, but the teachers came rushing over to break it up as Brian and I slipped away. Once we were out of the cafeteria, Brian began celebrating like I had just hit the game-winning shot in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. "I knew you had it in you," he yelled as he bounced up and down next to me. Brian was one of the cousins who used to terrorize me, so his approval was almost like a perverse version of Del Curry beaming with pride after his son Steph won the MVP of the NBA. I'd like to say that deep down I wish I hadn't hit that guy, or knew it was stupid to walk around with a .38 tucked in my boots, but nope. Trust and believe, I love that feeling of Brian hyping me up. I love knowing that the other kids in school would look at me in awe because I knocked out an upperclassman thug or would want to be my friend because I packed a pistol. I love that attention so much that all I wanted to do was cause more trouble. I didn't have to look far to find it. Kids were fighting in the halls, bringing guns to school, and smoking weed in the parking lot. The administration seemed powerless to rein it all in. They tried handing out 3-day suspensions for fighting, but kids would just ignore them and show up for school anyway. The inmates were truly running the asylum at Berkeley High School. The worst of the thugs was the Hit Squad, a crew of kids who borrowed the name of the popular early 90s rap group featuring EPMD, Das EFX, Redman, and K-Solo. The Berkeley High Hit Squad wasn't about making music, however. They would literally go around the school hitting people. They were making memes of knocking kids out before memes even existed. Every couple of days, they would pick someone at random and let it be known that person was going to get jumped at the end of school. Sure enough, as soon as the final bell rang, the Hit Squad would be waiting to hand out the fade to their unlucky victim. They were such a menace that the local paper, the Berkeley Independent, wrote an article about how their reign of terror was so bad that kids were staying home from school rather than deal with them. The Hit Squad never gave me any problems because a few of my cousins from Kitfield were in the crew. It also helped that I was able to strike up a friendship with their leader, a kid we called Steel, because that's what it seemed like his hands were made of. Steel admired the afro I was rocking at the time, and I always made him laugh, so I never had to worry that my name was going to get called. I managed to make it through the 9th grade, but sophomore year got off to a bad start. I helped set off this huge brawl in the cafeteria and beat up a kid pretty badly with one of those master locks that we use for our lockers. The school couldn't really look the other way on me beating the kid with a lock, so I was suspended for 10 days. A few things happened during my suspension that have stuck with me forever. First, my pops forced me to cut my afro. A lot of people in town used to call me Snoop Dogg because I copied his signature look of Chuck Taylor sneakers in an afro. My father never paid much attention to it until it was in the news that Snoop had caught a murder charge. On the first day of my suspension, my father grabbed me and announced, "Oh, you think